Okay, so in this short video, what I hope to do is address the question that many folks have in our community, which is what is this Hammond magnet program? And it's really a fair question because there's lots of confusion out there about what it is, why this is different than what a lot of other folks in other communities do. And so we're going to just try to explain it as best we can and as quickly as we can. And you'll see on this slide, I put kind of the best definition that I can come up with, which is that at the end of the day, after you peel through all of the different layers of what is a very complex program, the magnet program in Hammond is the school board's effort to increase the attractiveness of our Hammond public schools through choice and competition. And so I think probably the best way to explain that is to just talk about the journey that we've been on, and then we'll talk about the specifics. Right, so for brevity's sake, I won't go through the entire history with you, but ultimately you'll see as you go through this slide that the 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 effort to bring magnet programs into Hammond schools was basically an effort to try and uh, bring choice or opportunity for families in Hammond uh, when it came to public education or education in general. What we were trying to deal with was the fact that many parents felt like the only option for them when it came to schools for their children were private school options in Hammond. And so, with the leadership of many different folks throughout the community, uh, we instituted a program where we basically said, regardless of where you live in this parish, if you will choose to transfer into one of our Hammond public schools, we will give you something special. We will give you something that amounts to a little bit extra or a little bit more than what you could possibly get anywhere else. And so that's what we did. We started that in 2005 by saying that we would put your child into an accelerated class. We said that, look, if your child is performing at a higher academic level, we will cluster your child with some other high performing students in these schools, and we'll try to keep them at that accelerated level. So that worked for a little while, and then we added the element of saying, okay, well, if you'll continue to choose to come to our schools, we will give your child performing arts classes. Again, something that you can't get really anywhere else. Then, as the years went on and the program grew, we said, well, we're going to give you even more options, and we're going to give you the freedom to choose between multiple schools. And so we added these additional themes at each of these schools, in addition to the accelerated classes, and in addition to these art programs. And so that has grown. The other thing that we also wanted to do, though, was that rather than just offering this little bit extra to those that qualified for the accelerated classes, we wanted to make sure that we were meeting the needs of all of the students within each of these schools. So these themes that we were adding were also made available to students that were also at this school, but that would not necessarily be considered um, accelerated. And so that was an important thing that we needed to do. But at the end of the day, again, the entire effort um, has been all about trying to make these schools more attractive, and thus this notion of being a magnet, meaning attracting folks back to these schools that would not necessarily have made the choice to come to these schools absent having these special considerations, and then also um, legally getting rid of this notion that you had to live in a certain place in order to qualify to come to the school. So no longer were you required to live anywhere in particular to request a transfer to come into these schools. So when the board is asking voters to help us secure funding for the overall magnet program, essentially what we're asking the community to do is to help us fund all of these various programs throughout the Hammond community that are in these schools and that are making these schools more attractive for various types of students throughout the community. And so, for example, in Hammond, um, at Hammond High School, I mean, we have multiple programs, and each of these programs have different requirements in order to be able to take advantage of them. But you can come into those programs from throughout the parish. So, folks from Ponchatoula, Independence, all over the parish, um, because of this choice and competition, and because of this increased attractiveness, can request a transfer to come into these schools as long as they meet whatever the requirements are for those particular programs. And so what are some of those programs? Well, at Hammond High School, we have a very high level program called the International Baccalaureate Program. And of course, I would encourage you to go and visit Hammond High's webpage. They have various videos and information specifically about that program, but it's an exceptional program. But maybe if that's not the program for you and your family, then we have this medical magnet program, which would train your child for a possible career in the medical field. But again, if that's not your program, we're going to give you another option, which is the Pro Start program. That's a program that would help prepare your child for a job in the culinary field or in restaurant management or and so on. And then, of course, if that's not the right option for you and your family, then we have this Torbotics program, which is essentially an engineering program that would prepare your child in for a possible career in engineering. And again, this whole notion of the magnet concept is all about providing extra choices and options. And the reason that that's important is because now Ponchatoula has to compete for students um, with Hammond and with other community schools, and so that encourages Ponchatoula to be better. And Hammond is now able to compete with Ponchatoula and to try to attract students from over there. We're competing for students with the folks that normally would have only been interested in going to the private school, and that of course raises expectations for everybody. Everybody wants to get better because we're now competing for students, and we're also offering more options and things like that that were not previously available. So then bringing again, this notion of choice and competition down to the elementary school level, we've also set up various options at this level as well. And again, this is all made possible by removing the legal requirement, or essentially removing the legal requirement that you live in a particular area in order to take advantage of whatever's going on at these various schools. And of course, one of the things that we did in addition to adding all of these elements at all of the Hammond schools is we also said that, and look, if none of these things in Hammond are attractive to you and you live in Hammond, then we're going to provide funding to allow you, under certain requirements, to transfer to maybe a more traditional school environment in either Ponchatoula or Natalbany. And of course, we make transportation available uh, to do all of this. But again, going back to these Hammond schools, what we did at Hammond West Side is we added this element of a Montessori education. And again, I would just encourage you to go and look at what Montessori is. If you're not familiar with that, it's something that's very attractive to a lot of folks. Um, but again, it may not be what is right for everyone. So then over at Hammond East Side, we have the International Baccalaureate program and these performing arts programs. At Woodland Park, we have a high technology and communications program. At Greenville Park, we have an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're also putting in an extended day program for for kids that might need a little bit extra tutoring after hours. And then finally, of course, we have the option of the SLU Lab School program. So what I would argue is that when you are hearing the request to fund the Hammond magnet programs, um, really what you're hearing is a request to fund choice and opportunity and competition in public education for our community. Yes, I mean all of these various programs. You are essentially funding all of these various programs, some of which you may like, some of which you may not like. But that's not really what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do um, is to create an entire program where we are giving all of these options to our families, um, to include traditional options to go to some of these schools that might be outside of the Hammond attendance zone. That's all part of the program. And I would argue that by doing that, by making all of these choices and options available, you are instituting competition, which encourages everyone to get better. And so that's a good thing. And the final thing, just you'll see on this slide kind of the specifics of the funding request. And the only thing I would say here is that it's important to point out that at 15 mills, Hammond property owners would still be paying half of the state average paid to support public schools. So that the state average is about a little over 40 mills, and we would only be paying a little bit more than 20 when you add up the other two small millages that we pay. We'd be paying half of what Livingston Parish pays to support its schools. We'd be paying 1/3 of what St. Tammany pays, and we would still be paying some of the smallest amount of local taxes in the state for public education. So it's a good investment. It's a fair investment. It's the right thing to do for our children. Let's close by thanking you for watching this presentation. I hope I've answered this question of what the Hammond Magnet Program is. And if you have any other questions, look, my contact information is here on the slide. I hope you'll contact me. I hope that you'll support our efforts to secure this notion of choice and competition in public education. And I hope you will send me any questions or concerns you might have.